And now to our panel. Amy Walter is national editor of the Cook Political Report. Ben Domenich is publisher of the Federalist. Jennifer Jacobs is a political reporter for Bloomberg. And Ezra Klein is the founder of Vox.com. Ben, I want to start with you. Changes in the Trump campaign.
Yes.
What do they mean? The third head of the campaign now?
Yeah, third time around. So we'll see if this one's the charm. This was an interesting week for the Trump campaign because you had some strong speeches, I think, delivered by Donald Trump, some of the strongest that he's given on the trail to this point. And yet that was kind of stomped on within the political chattering class because of the internal moves and a real sense that perhaps the campaign was at a point where it felt the need, perhaps out of desperation, to bring some new folks in. Kellyanne Conway is a professional political commentator and pollster who's been around for quite some time. She's been doing work in political campaigns since the 90s, but the more eyebrow-raising hire was that of Steve Bannon, who's the head of Breitbart Media, who has been known less for being a conservative or a campaign operative. He's never worked on a campaign in any capacity, but rather for someone who's more confrontational, very tied to anti-immigrant voices and to anti-trade voices. And so it's, in terms of what we're going to see, the impact they're going to have on this campaign, I think it's very early. It's too early to really tell.
Ezra, the candidate, as Ben mentioned, Donald Trump gave some speeches, went down to Louisiana to visit flood victims. If he inhabits this, Reince Priebus thinks he's going to get Republicans to come back. So might that even things up if Republicans come home, who are clearly, there's some uncertainty about Donald Trump?
Trump is starting in a pretty big hole. And one thing about presidential campaigns, after you've been campaigning at this level of media exposure for a year or more, is that people's opinions of you are pretty set. Doesn't mean nobody will come back, but it is more than a speech. It is more than a weekend. It is more than a 3 or 4 or 5 day stretch of not making news for saying something horrible to change people's opinion of you. But something to what Ben said that I think is important. The Donald Trump pitch is that he will hire the best people. He will find the best people, he will manage them, he will bring the competencies of an executive from the business class to run an organization effectively. I think one real problem for him in the campaign chaos is he's not being able to show that pitch. He's not hiring the best people. He's getting very inexperienced people. He's not being able to run a stable organization. He's not running an effective organization. He's a media celebrity and he's running like one, but in terms of the idea that we needed a businessman, he's showing that he doesn't actually have those skills.
Right.
Although, John, he is hiring some new staff. This morning, we learned that he brought on Sean Spicer, who is the communications director for the RNC. That's a big deal for them. We're going to be seeing more staff additions this week. We're going to be seeing some interesting faces, but probably less of an impact than the staff is Trump's own acceptance that he is losing and he needed to change his approach. I mean, it was just a few months ago that Trump was, saying he could kill people and not lose voters. That famous Fifth Avenue comment he made about shooting someone on Fifth Avenue. Whereas now you're seeing him change. The code words that we're hearing this week were things like love each other, regret, unity. So he's changing his tone. This is a guy who has invested $48 million of his own money in his campaign. So he's motivated.
And Republicans are saying there is a group of Republicans who are desperate for a reason to come back to him. And this is, even though it's just 1 or 2 speeches, is giving them a reason. Amy, give us a sense of the map. Ezra said Donald Trump is in a hole. Yeah. The polling certainly seems to suggest that. Give us a sense of the nuts and bolts of the challenges he faces now, with voting some places is starting as early as late September.
Yeah, we are 3 weeks away in some of these states for the early vote to start. And we are to the point now, Ezra's right, we're at the point where not only are opinions of the candidates baked in, but we're now talking about the electoral college map is the thing that we should be spending most of our time looking at, the state by state realities. And we knew coming into this race that there was something that was called the blue wall. These states that Democrats had held in the last few elections, election after election, win or lose. And the question for Republicans was, could they break through that wall? Could they win a Pennsylvania? Could they win a Wisconsin? And it's clear from the polling right now that's not happening. It's also clear that those states that newly turned purple or have been leaning a little more blue than they had in the past, Colorado and Virginia, those look off the map now for Donald Trump. So in a place where he's doing well, Iowa, that's wonderful. Jennifer, Iowa's a beautiful place. We love the state of Iowa, but true swing state, it only has a handful of votes. And what we're seeing, and I think we're going to start to see this at the congressional level too, this bifurcation in this country between states that have a diversifying population, Virginia, Colorado, et cetera, versus states like Iowa that are overwhelmingly white. And in suburban districts, what we're hearing from pollsters on the ground there is Hillary Clinton is overperforming how Obama did in those districts, But in those more rural exurban districts, she's underperforming. And so the real challenge for Donald Trump is not just to get some of those people back that he's lost since the convention, but how is he going to get back those Republicans who year after year, college-educated suburban voters, vote for a Republican?
Particularly, how are you going to get that back without the necessary organization to really convince them? The whole problem with analyzing this election at this stage is that you have to assume a campaign, one that really has not come to fruition nor really come to the point of existence yet. The RNC can pick up some of the slack, as Reince Priebus was talking about earlier on the program, but there is a gap there where you no longer have a traditional campaign organization to do the kind of data-driven voter contact that has made such a difference in recent years.
Jennifer, Donald Trump has said, I don't need all that stuff. I've got these rallies, and these people are turning out, and these people who've never voted are going to turn out, and Democrats who've voted, are going to vote for me this time. Is there evidence that that's happening, that there is some group of voters out there that are being missed that are going to rush to Donald Trump?
Well, I know that Steve Bannon wants to target voters who want someone rich and powerful and rebellious enough to stand up to the rich and powerful. So I think we're going to start seeing a little bit of more of a ground game in the next few weeks. Time is their enemy right now, and they're really starting to move. In order for him to win, we're going to have to start seeing him make big moves in places in Pennsylvania. But I also know that they're going to start showing up in some really unpredictable places. I'm told that their top brass has this planned out. They have the math figured out. They think they really truly know how to win, but they're going to be showing up in some odd places. I'm told places we would never expect.
Odd places like what? Like Canada?
I am not sure.
I mean, if you look at a place like Long Island, all right, is a fascinating place to look, where you're going to see Donald Trump do really well in one part of Long Island and do really poorly in another part, but that doesn't mean he's going to win New York. It means he's going to win a congressional district there.
Another thing we'll see is that they're going to start really spending on digital advertising. So their new report, their filing came out last night, and their biggest expenditure is $8.4 billion for digital. So watch for Trump messaging to start popping up on our devices in some unusual places.
Ezra, I want to ask you about messaging. There's some reports about Donald Trump changing his position maybe on immigration. It was interesting to see Senator Sessions, who's very strong on the immigration question. It seems to be up in the air what Donald Trump's going to do with the 11 million undocumented workers. At the end of the primary, I didn't think that question was up in the air.
It seems to me to be a strange pivot to make in your messaging, where your argument becomes, if you did not like my position on immigration, well, the good news is you also can't trust me. That does not seem to me to be the move people need from Trump. I think to the point just made, there is a problem where this campaign cannot get away from the personality and the strengths and the weaknesses of the candidate himself. And they just keep doubling down on what they know. Going to digital advertising is a good example of that. I'm a big fan of digital advertising. It supports my publication. So I'm all for people moving to digital advertising. But what they keep doing is bringing in folks and moving to structures that are extremely good for the kinds of strength they had in the primary, which is reaching people they already agree with. These are not ways you reach people you don't agree with, and you don't reach people you don't agree with by coming out and saying, my message was actually completely confused and I was lying about my policies. We can look at it as messaging, but the way people experience this is trustworthiness. And when you come out and say, what I've been telling you all this time is no longer true because I still want to get elected and it isn't working, that doesn't actually help.
Ben, what do you make of the immigration? Am I missing something, or is it surprising that this kind of there's a confusion here about what's going to be done?
It is the policy that's most closely associated with him. I would argue it was the point where he became a serious candidate when he actually put forward his immigration plan. I think that this is possibly testing the waters on something, perhaps a move that could be made to try to soften his message a little bit for a general election. But I would agree with the idea that getting away from this would hurt his brand more than it would help it. The people who are convinced that Donald Trump is anti-immigrant and holds those views personally are not going to be convinced to come back to him. I think the real problem for him is turning himself into an acceptable candidate for a general election where he needs to be acceptable to college-educated whites, particularly suburban whites. I think that's one of the reasons why you've seen him talking in more soft terms about racial reconciliation and things like that.
And I think that's much more the point, that I don't think he's going out and trying to reach out to get Hispanics or African Americans. What he's saying is to the suburban educated voter who says, I don't like where he stands on these issues, he's saying to them, it's actually not that bad.
Right, and
come
that
back,
showed up
come
in
back
our
to the
polling
Republican
too.
side.
Right, exactly. All right. Thanks to all of you, and we'll be right back.